Mansfield.
You've plenty of Poodle quests on Nintendo's Nintendo 64, sure, but it's never been the console most closely associated with the racing genre. That, of course, was the Philips CDI, or the Philips home of racing as those of us in the know call it. Still, Nintendo's 64th device did have an array of drive 'em ups strewn across its library, peering out every now and then above the parapet to see if it was safe to come out, or if that tyrant Mario was still stomping about, wahooing his derriere on any mushrooms, video games competing for attention, in the vicinity. That dastardly plumber had his Mario karting. The Diddy one, not that one, had his Diddy karting. The San Franciscans were in a rush, the road sometimes had a rash. And as for F, zero. But there was never a true desire in the name of pace. No, that's the wrong way to put it. There was never an actual want regarding tempo. Still not getting across what I want to get across here. I just have a need for words like speed, a need for speed, if you will. Well, never mind all that. The N64 didn't have something, who knows what, but it did get something else in the place of whatever that originally mentioned something was. Look, I'm gonna talk myself in circles in the name of an objectively laboured joke, so let's drop that. Need for Speed. The N64 didn't have a Need for Speed game. But it was meant to. Nintendo's Ultra device wasn't being ignored by the cash-grabbing hawks at Electronic Arts, and the barely sentient suits in charge of slapping licenses on things to make sure every jabroni member of the public threw cash the company's way had plans. The plans were bold, unique, the sort of thing that would make you sit up and pay attention. The plans were to make a Need for Speed game on the Nintendo 64. The plans the actual developers contracted to make the game had, though, were a wee bit different. Pilot Wing's 64 codev Paradigm Entertainment was tapped to make a bespoke NFS for N64. Instead, Paradigm went and made something called Beetle Adventure Racing. A terrible name with a license for a then-new, always hideous, thoroughly uncool and definitely slow Volkswagen attached, blundered out into a market that was very much focused on the actual needs for speeds and the already dominant Gran Turismo when it came to driving games that were getting the most eyeballs. The focus was on cool, sleek, realistic but with a hint of arcadey. It was about aspirational brands, the sorts of vehicles you would convince yourself in your mid-teens you were actually in love with. Yes, I am talking about the Dodge Viper. The focus was not on a car that looked like an upturned novelty cake mold making its way through courses that often veered into the world of literal fantasy. But that's what Paradigm went and made. They weren't even supposed to. I absolutely loved this about Beetle Adventure Racing's genesis. EA told the studio to make a Need for Speed game, but the devs just went, "Nah, we'll make what we want to make instead." It's absolutely glorious. We decided to start from scratch on an arcade racing game that was built on what we thought the N64 audience would want versus just doing a straight port of an existing game, explained the senior producer on Bar, Hanno Lemke, when speaking to IGN back in 2023. The execs thought we were busy developing a Need for Speed game, when in fact we were off doing something completely different. EA execs sought a progress update and were confronted by a game vastly different from their expectations, something they couldn't see the prestige car brands slapping their license on. The natural feeling from the team at Paradigm was that the project would be killed. But it wasn't. The game was too good. Even the corpo suits could see that, so the execs gave a cautious nod with the instruction to carry on developing this Need for Speed game. We nodded politely, Lemke said, but then kept going down the path of making a unique to N64 racing game anyway, as we were convinced this was the right thing to do. It was the right thing to do. What eventually coalesced into Beetle Adventure Racing was so much better than a game called Beetle Adventure Racing should have been, as well as significantly more interesting, and arguably fun than any actual Need for Speed would have been were it pushed through as the original C-suite plans had it mapped out. Now, it's not to say this was some renegade development that somehow squeaked out under the nose of EA's brass. After a point, the project did get the official nod and resources were thrown at it from the publisher's side. A suggestion was made to focus on the then new Beetle for the desired manufacturer's license, and the addition of the quirky vehicle helped everything come together in a more coherently, wacky product. The finished game wouldn't have ended up as it did were it called Vauxhall Corsa Caper or Ford Focus Escapade, put it that way. Beetle Adventure Racing was finished and released on Ninty 6+4 in the first half of 1999, and it's still surprising to this day. You read the name, you see the new Beetles, you check out the marketing, you think Bar is going to be trash aimed at kids and idiots. Daft, short loop courses, nothing offering a real surprise or challenge in those tracks, that sort of thing. You don't expect your first quick race to take 7 minutes on a level that's tricky, smartly designed and absolutely riddled with shortcuts, alternate routes, collectible boosts and point bonuses, as well as other such hidden bits and pieces. While by no means an actual serious simulation of racing, this is an arcade game through and through, the fact is Bar does err slightly more on the side of simulation when it comes to the handling and general physics. Sort of like, well, Need for Speed, yeah, but with power-ups. It's perhaps a bit jarring initially, but as anyone who's played spiritual successors to Bar like Blur or Split Second can attest, you get used to it very quickly and it just makes sense. It all adds a level of seriousness, firm foundations to a game that could so easily have gone for purebred, ridiculous and zany. The adventure in New Beetling is challenging and rewarding, genuinely at the top of the pile of 90s racing with the depth and replayability that comes from its championships and unlockable, well, New Beetles. You get more New Beetles, but a bit faster basically. And you want to race those tweak cars around the tracks you've raced around dozens of times already because those tracks are so well done. There's always something new to find, always a shortcut you don't quite take properly that actually leads onto a whole other route you hadn't yet discovered. It gives and gives, keeping you enticed not through the act of holding off on what might unlock after 27 hours of play, but by giving you multiple clearly defined playgrounds to toss about in from the outset. Would you believe it, Beetle Adventure Racing is quite the adventure. And the icing on the cherry on the icing on the cherry is that the whole thing runs fantastically well. You're weaving through courses with a lot going on and the multiple different races on the track, the odd dragon or volcano popping off here and there. And this thing barely drops the pace at all. It's smooth, it looks good, it's timeless, it's absolutely nothing like the New Beetle at all. You have to keep asking, why and how did this get made, and made so well? It is, to reiterate the point, surprising. Be a bit daft if I didn't mention the multiplayer too, wouldn't it? In classic fashion, you won't be seeing anything I've recorded myself playing here as, sing along, you know the words, got no friends. It has to get a nod though regardless. Your standard split-screen racing mode is joined by a battle mode which, well, it's the better mode, isn't it? Up to 4 players, more weapons and other such pickups, a defined task at hand in locating a bunch of different coloured bugs, and a clever end game as there's a mad dash to exit the level on acquiring all said bugs. Just like the rest of Bar, Battle Mode has no right being as good as it is, and it's yet another element that, thanks to the whole thing being largely lost and forgotten about, has slipped through the cracks. Limitations? Sure. You are only driving one type of car despite the unlocks. The tracks are wonderful, but there's only 6 actual races to compete in. So while I will maintain it's replayable as all heck, it's fair to say some would bounce off the game after not too long, seeing it as repetitive in both what you're racing and where you're racing it. Gran Turismo had 11 tracks and hundreds of cars, for example, while the Need for Speed released closest to Bar, High Stakes, had 10 tracks, or 19 on PC, and featured dozens of cars from dozens of manufacturers, including Ferrari, Lamborghini, and Porsche. It's not a leap to think those comparisons would reflect negatively on the little Beetle that could. But those few criticisms didn't matter, not really. This was a different game for a different audience on a different console. Bar bagged big scores from the gaming press of the day. Well, except for CVG's 3 out of 5. Anyway, your 92% in 64 magazine, your 9.1s on IGN, and your Edge, the Edge score. Edge magazine gave the game, I don't think Edge reviewed Beetle Adventure Racing. Still, despite all this, despite all the positive press, the love showered on the game at release, the fact that EA had come around to greenlighting the project, the fact it had a manufacturer's license attached, a weird and unsexy one sure, but a big brand and a known vehicle, despite it all, Bar was a commercial failure. EA didn't support it with any real gusto, with marketing efforts at best utterly lacking. Beetle Adventure Racing launched early 1999 in the US and later that year in Europe and Australia, and didn't make a splash at all. Even retooling the game to feature local market-specific vehicles in Aussie land didn't help, with HSV Adventure Racing, exactly the same game just with different car models, performing just as poorly as the VW-branded original. It just wasn't meant to be. I'm looking through the game launches of 1999 to try and find out why. What was it that sucked the air and attention out of the room? But I'm coming up short. Final Fantasy VIII maybe? Nah. Mario Golf came a couple of months later on N64, sure, but there's no chance that had a real impact. Could it have been the ultimate irony that Need for Speed High Stakes released almost the same day even if it didn't make it to N64? Surely not. No, I think Bar just wasn't pushed hard, it wasn't marketed with any real smarts behind it, and it never truly caught the public's attention. It just wasn't meant to be. How such a labour of love was saddled with such a ludicrous license. How despite fandom inside EA itself, the game was sent out to die with a marketing push that looked much more like a prod. How we didn't see any ports or sequel, well, no, that's obvious. It didn't do very well, and it was a struggle to convert a game made specifically for the N64 to the PlayStation. Okay, so how we didn't see Paradigm make another racing game as good as this one in the just under a decade it survived post-Bar, all of that I'll never understand. But those letdowns, that wonder around what could have been, maybe what should have been, is all the baggage we should expect to arrive alongside a game that's such a moment, such a blip in the history books. Beetle Adventure Racing really shouldn't have ever existed. It's ridiculous in so many ways that it does, especially in the form it does, and under the EA banner, especially. For it to be something truly special in the history books, though, for this to be a game that really resonates and maintains an allure after decades in the Hall of Forgotten Nonsense, Bar had to be exactly as it ended up. Weird, ignored in its day, forgotten soon after, and returned to years later by those of us who pore over this nonsense. Beetle Adventure Racing stands out. It's special. It's unique. There's nothing else quite like it, you know, like the word unique implies. And best of all, it's genuinely really good still, even now, playing it in 2025. I will never not laugh at the final unlockable vehicle, the police car, which causes your opponents to pull over when you blast the siren at them. I mean, there's a lot of other stuff to like about the game, yeah, but that's the one that I'm picking as my standout point, so there we go. 6 out of 10. Thanks for adventuring along with me here, and special thanks to my patrons on Patreon for joining me on this out-of-control Volkswagen of fun that is this retro gaming YouTube odyssey. You can join the Beatlemania through the links below, and that's links plural because I still have YouTube memberships open too. Who knew? I'm off to see how many new Beetles are on Facebook Marketplace in the local area. If I can amass a literal collection of them for under 200 quid, we'll be onto a whole new chapter of my life. Bye!